I'm Idiotech, and these are my first impressions of Necropolis brought to you by Harebrained Schemes. So let's jump in. In the top left-hand corner of the screen, you will see that this game is co-op. I can invite friends from my Steam friends list, which is a nice feature. Co-op in this game basically changes one major thing, and that is it makes the game very easy because you can res your partners when they die. So that's kind of the difference. If you want an easy stroll through the game, play it with your friends. Otherwise, play it in single player for a more challenging experience. Okay, we have an options menu and new game, and that's it. I'm not going to show you the options menu, it's bog standard. So next we have edit character. We can play as a female or a male. We can change the color of our character. That's it. We don't have classes. This is a very Dark Souls inspired game, by the way. Sword and board combat, sword and shield, hold up the shield, block the attack, jump in, hit them back. That kind of an experience. It's third person. And they've taken that and tried to combine it with something like Rogue Legacy. I don't think it does either well, and I'm going to talk about why in this video. Welcome to the worst tutorial in the world. No, I hate it when games tutorialize like this, when they just give you a screen with all of the controls. This is not a good way to introduce people to the mechanics of your game. Front-loading every single moveset immediately is stupid and lazy, and this game sort of smacks of laziness. I'm going to say, there's a lot of stuff in this game that feels rushed, that feels unfinished, that feels unpolished, and feels like, honestly, the game was pushed out the door about 6 months to a year too early. On paper, the game shows a lot of promise. I like the idea of a Dark Souls-like game combined with Rogue Legacy. I love that idea. I think that is a fantastic concept. This game, however, does not execute that concept well. It isn't a terrible video game, but it doesn't execute that concept well. Okay, so you can lock onto targets. I can hold the left bumper, and I'll talk to you about controls in a minute. I can hold the left bumper to block incoming enemy attacks with my shield. It uses my stamina bar, which you can see in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen there, very similar to Dark Souls. I can also shield bash by pressing the left trigger. I can light attack with the right bumper, and I can heavy attack with the left bumper. If I hold down either one of those attacks until my sword does that, and I release it, I'll do a flurry of attacks, followed by an AoE explosion. That's the combat system. Very similar to Dark Souls with a few additions here and there. You'll also see on the ground here, I can pick up various weapons. This is how itemization in this game works. I can pick up weapons. I have 2 weapon slots. Let me just go over to my inventory. So you'll see here, I have 2 weapon slots. I can switch between those on the fly. I can also switch between secondary items on the fly. I have a piece of armor here, and I have a food item. Now, the food item will replenish my stamina and health. As you can see in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen, a portion of my stamina bar has disappeared. If I hold down to do another special attack, you'll see it makes me exhausted. Now, the reason it's doing that is basically to limit the number of times I can use these heavy attacks, these special powered-up versions of my attacks, to try and balance out the game. If I want to replenish my stamina now, I have to eat or consume a potion, which I will do. Okay, and that's really it. Other than that, we have lock-on, which I'm doing by pressing the right stick, and we have dodge by pressing the B button, so I can dash out of the way really quickly, and I can run. So that's kind of it in terms of controls. Now, why am I playing this with a controller? Because the keyboard and mouse controls, while somewhat serviceable, are not rebindable, and the locations of the keys on the keyboard layout is just bad. I mean, pressing the V key to run is very inconvenient, and you're going to want to use that a lot when playing the game, so things like that make it awkward to use the keyboard and mouse, and also analog control is much better in games like this to begin with. So, that's kind of why I'm using a controller, and if you want to play this game, I suggest that you do. So, every time we start the game, we start out in the same way. The game has multiple floors, like Binding of Isaac. We work our way down, and then the bits in between the floors are procedurally generated. However, in this game, we don't have bosses. So, as far as I can tell, based on what I've read, because I haven't beaten the game, you get one boss at the end. And that's it. And the boss is apparently not very well designed. So, that's an immediate flaw, because all games like Rogue Legacy, Binding of Isaac, all those types of roguelikes, Risk of Rain, all these games, they're built around the idea of progressing through a level, getting the items and the power-ups and the items you need to beat the boss and then move on to the next level. This game doesn't have that. You just progress from point A to point B. There's no map system, so I don't know where I've been, where I'm going. That's kind of annoying. And you work your way to the next floor just by random chance and searching throughout the level and exploring. You'll have seen as I'm walking around, I'm picking up gems. That's part of the currency system. I'm going to go over to this guy, and I'm going to try and buy some items. So I can buy a potion of vigor that regenerates my stamina and health. So I will do that. I will also buy a standard ration. That's all I can afford. Now, in the beginning stages of the game, you will find random gems on the floor, and they are procedurally generated also. Sometimes you'll start with a lot of gems, and other times you'll start with hardly any. So that immediately puts you on the back foot if you don't get enough gems. This right here is the progression system, and the only element of progression in the game. Let's go over here, interact with this book. So as you can see here, we have a series of tomes or books that we can pick and we can buy with our tokens, which you'll see on the right. You get those by completing the secondary objectives you see currently at the bottom of the screen. Plunder treasure chests, decompose diggers, collect creatures' droppings, okay? So if I do those things, I'll get tokens, and also when I die, my current gems will be converted to tokens, and then I can spend those tokens on these books. These books do not tell you what they do. You have to purchase them and find out as you play with them. I'm going to take this one. It basically, I think gives me more damage, but reduces my health pool. So yeah, I'm going to be using that. So, we have a pretty rudimentary combat system that mimics Dark Souls. It's nowhere near as polished, nowhere near as fluent as Dark Souls, and you would expect that given that this is an indie game. You have an art style which I think is quite aesthetically pleasing, quite creative in terms of its presentation. It's not something we haven't seen before. Indie games have been going with this faceted, flat shaded look for a while now. I do like the lighting in the game, but one major problem I have with the aesthetic is that while the character looks cool and the lighting is nice, the overall level design is procedurally generated and it's very grim, dark, and not particularly exciting to look at. As you can see, the majority of the walls here and everything around me is just flat shaded gray, and really the only color you see in the world comes from this lighting effect, for example on these red crystals. Okay, so we've immediately spawned some difficult enemies, which sucks. I'm going to try and beat them and not die. These guys are significantly harder than the standard enemies you get, and they spawn out of these red crystals, so I'm going to do my best to defeat them. Okay, let's dodge out of the way of this guy, wait for him to attack. Alright, we're going to shield bash him, get a swing in. Now, the stamina bar on the left-hand corner is very important, and I am slightly low on stamina on a permanent basis right now. Now, sometimes the enemies will attack each other. I'm not entirely sure if that's intended or not. I'm about to die, so I'm going to get the fuck out of dodge. Okay, that guy's swinging like a crazy man. Okay, now, I'm going to replenish my health by eating this arcane food and replenish my stamina. Okay, so that's done. I'm going to pick up these items. Now, oh shit, okay, let's get out of the way, lock onto this guy. Alright, dodge his attack. Get rid of him. Come on, get dead, son. Okay, he's done. So that's the combat system. As you can see, it looks kind of floaty. It doesn't feel very impactful at all. And while, you know, serviceable, it's nowhere near as refined as Dark Souls. So on a Dark Souls-alike front, it doesn't mimic it very well. On a progression system front, something like Rogue Legacy, Binding of Isaac, those types of games, they're full of items, full of content, full of different types of combinations of gear. They offer a lot of replay value in that sense. This game really doesn't. When you kill a specific type of enemy, they drop a specific type of weapon. And that's kind of it, you know? And in terms of other progression systems, you get those books. And that's basically the progression system. So the progression system feels very underbaked. I'm going to say that. The game overall just feels like it needed another 6 months to a year in the oven, and I feel like it would have benefited from releasing an early access. Get some player feedback, you know, see what people want from a game like this, and try and refine it over time. Early access would have given them the funds to do that. It seems like a mistake to me to not put this game out in early access and then refine it, add bosses at the end of every level, add more enemy types, improve the progression system, add more item variety, give people classes, you know? Oh, okay. These things are basically treasure goblins, and they give you cool items sometimes, like this. I got a pyramid greatsword. So this is a huge two-handed sword. Well, except it's one-handed, but you know what I'm saying. It's a massive sword. It will take a long time to swing, and when I use it with the power attack, for example, let me get some stamina back up. Let's see what it does with a power attack. I want to actually check this thing out, because I've never seen this sword before. Okay, here's some bad guys. Let's go over here. Attack them. Oh, by the way, the AI is really shit. It gets caught a lot on objects, Now, I haven't been able to demonstrate that to you here, but it does very frequently get stuck on walls, stuck on floor objects, and you'll have like 10 enemies stacking up behind something like this, not being able to reach you. And it's, you know, just another example of a lack of polish. Oh, come on. Get dead. Give me something? No, it gave me nothing. I seem to find that the ones with the red glowing thing on top of them give you weapons. Okay, this enemy here is a screamer, so to explain a mechanic that an enemy might have, this guy screams and attracts other enemies nearby. That's his mechanic. So there are mechanical differences between the various enemy types in the game. It does, on paper, have everything that it should have to make a fun and exciting experience, but the problem is that none of those things are fleshed out. You know, on paper, a Dark Souls clone, so to speak, combined with something like Rogue Legacy or Binding of Isaac, is a really good idea, and the permadeath element doesn't necessarily annoy me. I think it's a relatively cool idea so long as you have a satisfying progression system to go along with it. This game doesn't, you know? Oh shit, okay, hang on. But that's not to say it's a terrible experience. It's not a terrible game by any stretch of the imagination. And on paper, it's a good idea. It just, the execution is not there. You know, it needed way more time in development. And that's really obvious as soon as you play it. Everything about this game just screams early access. Yet it's not an early access, and it's currently available for $30 US, and I walked into a spike trap because I wasn't paying attention. So yeah, that's the game. That's Necropolis. Do I recommend you pick it up for 30 bucks? No. Would I recommend that you check it out in maybe 6 months to a year? Yes, provided the developers do some additional work on the title. It's as simple as that. The game, I think, has a lot of promise. I think it needs more content. I think it needs fleshing out. I think the environments need to be spruced up a bit because they all look the same. There's just a ton of things wrong with the game, and I would excuse all of those problems if the game had released in early access, but as it stands right now, it's certainly not worth recommending, and I don't recommend you spend $30 of your hard-earned money on it. If you found this video helpful or useful in some way and you want to support this channel, you can like, comment, share, and subscribe, and if you want to support me financially, you can do so on Patreon. You will find a link in the description box below for that. Thank you once again for watching, and I will see you guys next time.